Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. So, I'm going to continue the conversation, right, that I started last week regarding your career progression, right? Either on the EDI side, right, moving from one EDI project to another, or moving from a different EDI tool that you have been using in your previous project or previous company to another project, okay, where you are supposed to work on Sterling Integrator, right? Or maybe you have never done any EDI development. You have not worked on like EDI project. You might be a Java developer or a .NET developer or C Sharp and all those, or maybe Python developer, and you are asked to work in an EDI project. Now, I gave some basic interview questions, right, that you can anticipate from a mapping point of view. Today, in this conversation, what I'm planning is I'm going to expand beyond just the mapping part of it, because when it comes to Sterling B2B integrator, as you all know, or if you're new to Sterling B2B integrator, for those folks, there are three key areas, right, in Sterling integrator as a integration product, right? If you want to bucket them, the first is around the experience of creating translation maps, right, using map editor. So you need to be a good mapper, right, where you understand the different standards, right, edifact, x12, xml, csv, flat file, those kind of input files, and then you would be given an output format, right, that you want need to translate to. And then you need to understand the business logic and how you want to code it within the map itself, versus the second bracket, or the second key area that any EDA developer is supposed to have experience in, is business process development, right? When I say business process, basically the end-to-end workflow that you need to design either from scratch within Sterling Integrator, or maybe there are existing business processes already running within the system where you may want to make some tweaks or changes based on the new requirement that you have, right? Mm. Typically, I've seen when I have taken like a lot of interviews, right, for my projects, or maybe a new employee joining in our company, I've seen like when I start asking questions on business process development, um, uh, most of the time I get an answer that, oh no, I have done small bit of business process development. Typically, I have like edited some existing processes, right, that are already there, did some modifications, do not have a good experience or haven't worked on creating a business process from scratch, right? Which is a common answer, right, in most of the cases that I've seen. And I understand, right, the hesitation, or sometimes like even like let's say if you're a junior developer, right, typically you're not given or you don't have exposure to create business processes, right? And I totally get that. But I'm going to talk about some of the typical interview questions, right, that you can anticipate when you're preparing for your EDI interview, specifically around business process in our today's session. But before we do that, right, the third bucket that I was mentioning in Sterling Integrator is the admin part of it, right? Is, let's say you're a Sterling developer also wearing a hat of an administrator, right? So you need to know how to install Sterling Integrator in a fresh environment, right? Or maybe you need to know how to upgrade to the latest version. Let's say you are running on maybe 5263 and there's a new version out there, or maybe new patch, right? You need to know how to upgrade it, right? So those kind of things. Or maybe uh, you have some performance issues installing integrated in production environment, and you need to troubleshoot within the application what exactly is causing the slowness, right? And files are failing, or the trading partners are reporting that they can't log in and all that, and then be able to fix it, right? Either Sometimes you need to know how to restart Sterling application. You need to look into the different kind of logs, right? And find out the errors, and then have that understanding of, okay, if this is the error, okay, what might be the reason, right? Where should I look into, right? Those kind of things. So that's another big area of admin. Now, coming back to the business process development, right? Typically, and this is based on my experience that I wanted to share. Every interviewer is different, right? So this is not something like uh, a single solution fits all problem, right? Or the way I'm gonna talk about different kind of interview questions, okay, may not be another interviewer would follow the same approach, right? So don't quote me on that. But when I usually take interviews, okay, I start uh, just scratching the surface, okay, trying to understand whether the candidate have a good understanding of a typical inbound flow, right, within the business process context, right? Let's say if I give a question like this, like, can you explain, uh, let's say you have an external partner and you're receiving maybe X12 document, right, inbound uh, to your Sterling integrator. Now, the requirement is that you need to take the file, right? You need to identify who the partner is, right? And then you need to be able to pick the right map that you have already created and integrated within your workflow or business process to use it to translate the file into maybe an XML document, right? Or a flat file. And then let's say you have an internal file system, right? And folders specific to every trading partner where your downstream applications are actually polling those file system and picking files at a certain schedule. So you need to be able to post the file, okay, to that file system. So this, if this is a requirement, explain me the EDI flow, right, in respect to business processes. Like, I don't need all the individual detailed service names, but at least I need to understand what are the high level services that you would be using in your business processes, right, to achieve this business functionality. So to answer this, there are certain things that you need to make sure you note it, right? I mentioned X12 document. I didn't mention Edifact, right? I could have mentioned TraderComp, right? So I'm specifically have mentioned an X12 document, right? Now, if you are familiar with the different standards, and if you're familiar with business processes, right? If you have really done any development in business processes, this is something that you should very easily identify that and be able to answer this, right? Like that installing integrator, um, all the services and adapters within that, there is a specific service name called EDI envelope service, right? Now, let's say you start, okay, that you receive a file, right? So you must have received it in a maybe a mailbox, right? Or maybe uh, 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 yeah, let's assume it's a mailbox, right? So you must have a mailbox where the files are sent using maybe SFTP protocol, right? Now, there is a bootstrap business process that as soon as a file lands into that mailbox, there's a business process that should kick off. And then here is where you need to mention that what are the services. Now, I mentioned about EDI envelope service. What that service does is that EDI envelope service basically picks the file, which is an X12 document, and it tries to identify the standard of the EDI file, right? Whether it's an X12, whether it's a trader.com, whether it's a edifact document, right? So EDI envelope identifies that, yeah, it's an X12 document, right? That's the purpose of it. So you need to know that. So you mentioned that, okay, I'll be using EDI envelope service. Then I'll be, once the X12 document is identified, the next process, okay, in your the service, okay, that you're going to use in your business process is X12 de-envelope service, right? So EDI de-envelope service and then X12 de-envelope service, because once the file is identified as an X12, now you need to look into all the like the interchange, the segment, the group level, right? And slowly looking into those headers, right? Okay, should be able to then de-envelope that, like read those, parse those headers, right? So you need to use X12D envelope service. And I'm not asking like go deep, right? Just say high level. EDI envelope service followed by X12D envelope service, right? And if there are any follow-up questions, the interview would definitely ask, right? Okay, if he wants to go more deep, but just mention, okay, these are the two services that does this. And then once the D envelope service runs on the X12D envelope, okay, it should be able to identify based on the IS, IEA, GSG, okay, those envelopes, okay, you might have created a map, okay, a translation map, which is configured, right, within the Sterling integrator, where once this DNL service goes through and passes all the headers, okay, it should be able to identify, okay, this is the map. Like, let's say if it is an 850 document, a purchase order, it should be able to pick up a specific translation map. That's there in your envelope configuration, right, within your Sterling integrator, right? So, and then the next big service, okay, that you're going to use is a translation service, right? So translation service will kick off. It will use that map that you have already written and deployed, right? Is going to convert the file into a XML file or maybe a flat file, for example, right? And then the last requirement, right, that if you remember I mentioned is you need to drop the file into a file system specific to that trading partner. So use file system adapter, right? And you place the file into maybe a inbound folder under the specific trading partner naming convention, right? So this is a simple EDI flow, right? You should be able to explain this, right, as a BP developer or a business process developer, right? If you are familiar with it. Similarly, the second question might be, okay, explain an outbound EDI flow. Whereas, let's say my downstream application is generating a flat file and I should be able to convert it into an X12 document and send it out, right? So then you follow the opposite, right? Okay, so the file is placed maybe in a mailbox or a file system. You might have a bootstrapped uh, process that picks up the file, right? Okay, if it is a file system data, so you will have like a pickup configuration within that. Okay, when the file is picked up, you should be able to then use a map, right? That's gonna create the X12 document, then use enveloping service, right? X12 enveloping service, right? And all that, so that it adds the wrapper, right? The group level, the interchange level, the segment level wrapper, the headers right on top of that, and then you use some kind of like either if you are like pushing the file to an external location, then there would be different set of services. Like maybe you are using SFTP protocol and you are going out and uh, connecting to a SFTP server of the trading partner. So there will be like SFTP client begin session service. Then you go to a CD service, maybe a specific directory for the trading partner, and then SFTP put service, and then a client end session service, right? That's how you do that. So yeah, you can ask more questions to an interview, like, okay, can you tell me whether it's a push for a full pull, like if you want to be very specific, so you can explain that, right? That's kind of the second follow-up question. Now slowly, okay, things will start going into more deeper level, right? Okay, now the interviewer might try to understand or gauge you. Okay, now that you are able to explain the inbound and the outbound flow, can we talk about, okay, what is, let's say, services and adapters? What's the difference between services and adapters, right? So you should be able to explain that service and adapters are nothing but like, when it comes to adapters, right, it's also one type of service, but adapter is specifically when you're using that service to connect to an external application, right, or external system. That's why it is an adapter, right? And services are specifically like it does some kind of task, right? For example, like I mentioned the envelope service, right? It goes through the envelopes and all that, right? So those kind of things, right? So translation service, for example, it does kick off the map, right, to translate the file from one format to another format, right? So you should be able to explain this, the difference between services and adapters, right? Now the question might be that what is process data, right? So you need to be able to explain what is process data, right? It's similar to an XML format, right? And the process data is where you are collecting or you are collating all the metadata of the business process on runtime that you are using, okay, for consecutive services and adapters in each and every step, right? And you basically, and then it can go more deeper, like, okay, how do I query the process data? Let's say I need a specific information from the process data, right? What function that you would be using, right, to retrieve the information from the processor on runtime for the specific service as an input, right? Those kind of questions might come. They might ask you, right, what is the difference between a DOM to doc or a doc to DOM? Those are a couple of functions, right? Like you need to understand when it is DOM to doc, okay, is basically you are taking certain information from the process data and creating a primary document, right? So that's the opposite of that is doc to DOM, which means that you have a primary document attached to the process data, right? And you need to take some information from the document on runtime and be able to then put it into process data so that the next service, okay, or maybe two service down the line, okay, that specific information is needed to be able to then execute that service, right? So those kind of things might be asked, right, in the interview, right? Then there might be more different kind of questions, like for example, let's say a business process ran, okay, and it failed at certain step, right, or it might error out, right? Now as a support person, right, what is the difference between restart and resume of a business process, right, when you try to debug and then like, okay, so you need to be able to explain like what is restart means, okay, you are actually, let's say a business process failed and you want to, like, you have to take the decision, okay, is it some kind of connection error, right, that might have interrupted the business process, or is it something technical error within the code itself or within the document itself, right, something. So based on the reason of the error, okay, you should take the decision whether I should restart this business process versus resume means, okay, let's say there's an external uh, application which was down for a certain time and you are trying to do sftp connect, begin session service, and it was retrying maybe after three times, okay, it failed, right? So this for a brief amount of time the external sftp server was not available, so your business process fails. So you don't have to like restart the business process, like which might have some additional 10-20 steps before the sft part, because that's not needed, because you just need to resume it so that like it starts processing or executing the steps, okay, from where it has failed, okay, just to initiate another sftp connection, okay, rather than doing all the prior work, right? Versus restart is where, like, let's say you might have fixed some error in the either the primary document that was was an input to the business process because the document has some issues, okay, some formatting issues, all that. Or maybe the business process has some like failure testing, or maybe it has some like changes that you have done, right, in the business process and redeployed the code, right? You might want to do a restart, right, to take that new code and then execute that. So you need to be able to understand those kind of differences between those restart and resume, right? So yeah, I hope I don't want it to keep this more lengthy, right? For this, like, I want to give you like more bite sized so that you're able to digest it, right? Rather than doing a 1 hour or a 2 hour session. But I'm seeing very good comments, and unfortunately I'm not able to reply to all of them right now, but do remember I'm looking into all your comments and trying to plan for my next sessions and all that. So keep those comments, right, coming, right? It can be positive, negative, whatever it is, I'm fine with that, okay? But I want to understand whether these sessions are useful to all of you, right? And if not, okay, what can be the improvement areas that I can work upon, right, and plan accordingly. So yeah, I think that's all for today. I hope to talk to you next week as well, right, on this topic. As I think business process development is a big piece of it, so I'm going to try to chunk it into small this kind of like sessions, so that is useful for people who haven't done any PB development or have done but not so experienced around that, right? And also focus on mapping part of it. So yeah, until then, I wish you all a very nice weekend and talk to you next week.